racist, or why do they lack tolerance towards Iranian people? How do you break that stereotype?
We had this come up early before you arrived with Lydian's beginning idea. She was thinking about the fact that Spanish Harlem has the most obese people in New York.
Yeah.
And when she went, she went to talk with people there, as they have to do at this stage of their project. And one person said, we really don't like people from outside telling us how we want to be. Essentially saying, well, if I want to be obese, then let me be obese.
Right. Yeah,
and this is part of this interesting.
Yeah, and
approach.
that's actually a really interesting example, because when I was talking about microfinance before, the reason why microfinance, which is the small loans, has been successful in Queens, it failed in other places in this country, but it was successful in Queens because they figured out that they had to have people who spoke Spanish, who had Latin descent, who were one of those people, to convince them how they could lift themselves out of poverty, or that they should take advantage of this. So there was a lot of design thinking involved in that, because somebody very carefully thought about that whole thing, what turns people off to outsiders, or what makes them skeptical.
Very elemental things like xenophobia is an elemental response that everybody has in some way. It may not be about the same group of persons, but everybody is, at least for 1 second, xenophobic in some way.
Mm-hmm. So,
So admitting to those elemental manners of behavior, whether they fit in some desired rule or not first, and then moving from there. People want to eat, and then they're going to talk, and if this is food from.
It's almost like admitting to a certain level of it's being honest about real human attitudes.
Real motivation and desire. And so we have about 3 or 4 more minutes left in our time today. Some observations or questions?
I was thinking right now that what you were saying about how design thinking is human-centered and everything, and how telling people not to do something is just not going to work, because you're not finding the right platform to build your message. And that's how design is basically, for me, that's how it, we are used to see this in just in a formal way. How can I say something interesting in a very, or something boring in an interesting way, or this idea to be more clear. But maybe it's because we don't, this projects are hard for me, I guess, because it's a different approach. We're not dealing with nice.
It's not about style.
It's not about style. It's about.
That can enter later on. You can do stylistic tools as part of this. A restaurant could be a really pleasant place to sit in, and it should be.
Yeah, but that turns out into be that formal part of the design that we're used to touch. Not the graphic, not the visuals, but this is another aspect of that formal. The pathway where this idea is going to go through. And since it's coming from a very something that everybody's used to, food, or something that everybody's so accustomed to. So it turns out to be more organic. They don't know where this idea came from. They just are suddenly into it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's.
That's the really challenging part.
They're sort of there, and then they're suddenly talking. And then in the case of this example, it's not.
It's almost a very stealthy,
It's stealthy with good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Good intentions. Stealth.
Yeah, you almost have to trick people into.
Yeah.
I don't know, changing or what But that's the thing.
Trick is not the right word, but it is sort of.
It's that karate thing that we were talking about.
The what thing?
The karate.
I was just going to say that. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly. It's using the natural forces of that person or of your opponent, and then turning it into something.
Yeah, and that's the reason that that commercial marketing and advertising people are so good, because that's what they do. I mean, they really know this kind of eyeglass, on this kind of person, and this kind of city, and this kind of language, and this kind of music. taps into already, guns that are loaded already to do something. And
Yeah.
and the social people for almost the entire history of this have missed it completely.
Yes.
So just now do they start to seem to kind of begin to get it.
Well, and I think most of them don't get it. I mean, that's
Most
why
of them still don't get it.
it's
no.
so crazy to me. Like, I think one of the most shocking things about coming to New York was the status that designers have in the social change world. I mean, have you guys been to the Feast or heard of the Feast? I know Tom went. But if you guys are interested in social innovation or social change with a design perspective, the Feast is a really cool conference. And it's all designers. And the really, I mean, I think designers have a wonderful place in the space. I don't think they can do it alone, but I think that the really wonderful thing that designers do have is they have the training to be empathetic and to listen and understand their human subjects, but also to create things that are visually compelling and that make, like the film that I showed you. It's very beautifully and artfully done. Like, people will want to watch that. I would want to go to Conflict Kitchen just because it looks really cool. So, I mean, the visual aspect is important, but it's secondary. So yeah, it's pretty amazing the power that designers have is pretty incredible. It's it is. I mean, I was so flabbergasted when I came here. I was like, aren't lawyers supposed to be controlling this all? But we have many lessons to learn too. So.
Any final questions, comments?
Well, I have two questions. I'm curious to hear how you kind of found systems thinking and realized that was a good outlet for you, since this lawyer realm was a little too structured, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious about what you do to find people you want to work with and keep yourself connected to new people.
Yeah. Okay, good questions. Systems thinking, really, I went through, I'm curious about a lot of things. One of the things I started reading about a few months ago is quantum physics, which some of it's really heavy, some of it's not too bad. If anybody wants any reading suggestions, I can tell you. But that's really what set me on to it, because it's the idea that we are all interconnected. And so when you think about the fact that all humans are interconnected, then everything is interconnected. And I think when you take a step back and you think of what I call the design policy or the design law mashup, you realize that this isn't, Conflict Kitchen isn't just about like a hate speech law. It's about foreign policy, it's about education, it's about all these different things. So it almost becomes impossible to really analyze a social issue without thinking about all of the factors that come into play with that. So that's sort of the short answer, because I know we're short on time.
So came from reading about quantum physics and then it's seemingly part of an answer to the engaged in this kind of project.
And as far
inclusive.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in quantum physics, David Peat, P-E-A-T, is a really amazing physicist, but he writes in like layman's terms. So if anybody has any interest in that. And then as far as finding people I want to work with, I think a lot of it has been social media, like blogging, meeting people like Tom and putting like our small group together and just really networking a lot. I'm sure Tom has talked to you about that. But the more I put myself out there, the more people, like-minded people are sort of attracted. So I literally have people who will read my writing and email me and be like, you sound really cool. And then I'll be like, okay, well, let's talk on the phone. And they're lawyers who are like, I'm a lawyer, but it sucks. And so
Help me.
I'm serious. Like, I have like 3 lawyer friends that are, totally, I made friends with them through social media. So yeah, I think just putting yourself out there and being really intellectually curious, and you'll see that people who have substance and are passionate about the same things that you are, like you find each other. So
So like writing,
Yeah.
using social